John, do you have a way forward for us, or do we just wait till the destruction comes and keep the candle burning? But what have you thought a way that you can advise or whatever that we could take?
Well, it's a good question, and let me just say a couple of things, and I just need a little bit of time to answer because it's probably the most important question, I think, and it's really important that we have some sense of that we're not simply, admonishing the tide. Ratzinger used to have a phrase which I love. He said, "The truth always has a future." Now think about that. The truth always has a future. That means something. It means that if we continue to adhere to the truth, one day we will be vindicated. Let us not think that we are beaten because the ideology tells us that there's a linear progress going from A to Z and we are on the losing side. Because that will be to say that there is no such thing as a human structure. There are no such thing as limits to the human capacity to behave in certain ways. There's no limits to the genetic model that we have inherited. That there's no limits to evolution. All of these things. We have to accept that this is not true. These things are not true. So that's the first thing. So let's not give up, because the worst thing that possibly will happen if we give up is that there'll be a victory party and we won't be invited. So let's not give up. But the other thing I want to say is this. And there's a wonderful book which came out by an Italian-German writer, Romano Guardini, The End of the Modern World. It came out in 1956. And he talks about this question. And he says there are two kinds of pessimism. There's a good pessimism and there's a bad pessimism. There's a pessimism that kind of is simply almost nihilistic. But there's a pessimism that is justified by the facts. And he talks about how we might organize ourselves against this, against this moment that he saw coming. Remember, this is 56, the year after I was born. He saw this kind of stuff in a certain form, in essence, he saw it coming. He was a priest, and a philosopher, and a theologian, Romano Guardini, The End of the Modern World. I just want to read you a couple of things, because he talked about the qualities that Christians would need to find in themselves. And he identified earnestness, seriousness of purpose, gravity, and asceticism. Asceticism to stand against this self-indulgent culture, which can only lead to disaster. And there's this paragraph. He said about the word gravity. He said, "The virtue of gravity will be spiritual, a personal courage devoid of the pathetic, a courage opposed to the looming chaos. This gravity or courage must be purer and stronger even than the courage man needs to face either atom bombs or bacteriological warfare, because it must restrain the chaos rising out of the very works of man. Finally, it will find itself, as true courage always does, opposed by an enemy, the mass, ranged against it in public organisations, clotted with catchwords." That's Ireland, plotted with catchwords. That's where we stand. That's what we have to fight. We have to. These are the qualities. I think he's right that we have to find in ourselves to go on, to be proud in going on, to be proud that we're not wrong. Sometimes we're inclined to think that everybody else is of a different opinion. How can this? You have to go back then to first principles. You have to start again and follow this train of thought through again. That's what reason is, and we must find the courage to continue.